Morning kids, I want to talk about how extreme views end up taking over the UK Parliament and how we can stop them. I just finished watching Question Time and Tory MP George Freeman just gave a breathtakingly hypocritical defence of Lee Anderson, or as you might know him, 30p Lee. The guy who said that poor people can survive on 30p meals if they just learn to cook properly. Well, he's also a supporter of the death penalty, saying that nobody has ever committed a crime after being executed. 100% success rate. Now, of course, as we know from our friends in America, since 1973, 190 people have been found innocent after they were executed. So as Ian Hislop once said,
this is about having deterrence. You know, if you have strong deterrence of that nature,
it's not a deterrent killing the wrong people.
Well, no.
Well, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak just made General Lee Anderson chair of the Conservative Party, and here's what George Freeman had to say about it.
Parliament is a place that needs to speak for all the people of this country, even voices we don't all want to hear. And Lee Anderson does speak for a lot of people in this country. It's important that people from the left and the right, people of dissonant voices and views, are heard.
Now that's interesting coming from a Tory MP, and especially coming from him, because in the last election the Tories got 44% of the vote, but ended up with 56% of the seats in Parliament, allowing them to pass any law they like without having to even consult the parties that literally most people voted for. So under our current voting system, Parliament literally doesn't
speak for all the people of this country.
If we wanted to make sure that the voices of a wide range of people were heard in Parliament, we'd need to switch to a proportional voting system where all votes count equally. But would you look at that? George Freeman voted against proportional voting as recently as 2020. In fact, when there was a referendum on changing our voting system in 2011, George Freeman voted against putting proportional voting as an option. So Tories like him not only stopped us from having an equal voting system, they wouldn't even let us vote to say we wanted one. Yet here he is saying he wants a wide range of views to be expressed in Parliament, and he's saying it to defend putting someone in charge of the Conservative Party who literally wants the government to start killing British people. And what makes it so hypocritical is that Lee Anderson is on the right of the Conservative Party. If you look at all the elections we've had since World War II, except for 3 of them, the majority of voters have chosen parties that are more left-wing than the Conservatives, including in the last one. So if we had a parliament where all voices were heard equally, then we'd have a much more left-wing and progressive parliament that would tax the rich more, help the poor more, improve human rights and equality. Instead, we got a party in absolute control who the United Nations says is trying to normalize white supremacy, whose prime minister bragged about taking from the poor to fund the rich, and who just put Lethal Lee in charge. So defending his appointment as chair of the Conservative Party in the name of making sure that Parliament reflects the people is frankly demented. And I don't use that word lightly, because he doesn't stop there.
There's only one thing I fear more than a parliament with somebody like Lee Anderson in it. It's a parliament where you're not allowed to say what the people who put you there want you to say. And that is why the people of Ukraine are fighting. They want freedom, liberty, and the...
hang on a minute. Are you comparing Lee Anderson to the fight in Ukraine?
Yes, he is. He just argued that if we don't let Lee Anderson be chair of the Conservative Party, we may as well let Putin move into Downing Street. Look, the common argument that gets used against changing our voting system to proportional representation is that if you let all votes count equally, then the tiny, fringe, extreme parties will finally get some seats in Parliament. Fine. We're either a democracy or we're not. If a significant number of people in the country hold those views, then they should be represented in Parliament. As I said, the numbers show that they're a tiny minority, and the longer we rely on an unfair voting system to silence them, the more they'll feel the need to take back control. Do you want Brexit? Because that's how you get Brexit. Besides, I'd much rather take these people on in public, in Parliament, than not be able to question their narratives because all their discussions are taking place in private Facebook groups and gentlemen's clubs. For example, if UKIP had had a few seats in Parliament for the 20 years before the referendum, they would have had to present a clear plan for leaving the EU in Parliament in public, including which precise deal they would want us to negotiate for and provide evidence for how that would affect the economy. And so the very idea of Brexit would have been thoroughly and publicly ripped apart ages ago, and we'd be £100 billion richer right now. And because equal voting would tip the balance of power towards progressive, we could leave the regressive ideas of people like Boris Johnson, Nigel Farage, or Lee Anderson in the past where they belong. My point is, if you think
it's important that people from the left and the right, people of dissonant voices and views, are heard.
You don't do that by putting an extremist in charge of a party with absolute control. You do that by making all votes count equally, which is what Labour members just voted to do. The only person in the way is Keir Starmer. Have a great week.